All right, I'm 365 Days of Horsemanship. I gotta pre-warn you that there's probably going to be a lot of yawning in this one because I am doing so much processing after the first day at Elsa's clinic. I think really proud of myself because I'm definitely challenging myself a lot in a lot of areas by being here. I am working with someone else's horse who's also a horse that I never met until 2 days ago. And it's also doing Elsa's work, the freedom-based training work, which I feel like when I did Braveheart Beast last weekend, and I feel like I had so much more confidence because I didn't really, in the nicest possible way, I didn't really care what people thought about me because it's not what I do. I don't do dominant training really, and when I do it, it's the icing on the cake of the rest of what I do, which is the freedom-based training work. And so I wasn't really that bothered about people's judgments of me, whereas this is something I'm really passionate about. I do a lot of it, and I talk about it on here. And so I feel like I put more expectations on myself, and I'm easier to judge myself or criticize myself. And so I feel like I have put myself in quite a high pressure situation. And then additionally, I am staying with some friends here, which in a weird way for me is kind of like harder than staying in a hotel or camping by myself, because when I'm by myself, I can just like do whatever. Whereas when I'm with someone else, staying with someone else, I feel like I want to make sure that I don't do anything wrong, say anything wrong, be frustrating, make their life difficult in any way or anything like that. So I feel like I've kind of like challenged myself from all angles. And I am really proud of myself. I definitely had a really interesting and challenging session today. Abel got really concerned about a wasp. The wasp came and then the wasp left, but Abel was so concerned that then any time a fly would touch him, he would think it was a wasp and like start freaking out. And he has got a lot more fight and play in him than either Mia or Lawrence. Like, Mia's got fight and play, but I actually think that she would prefer to leave. Like, she's kind of like trained herself to do it to an extent where like she'd kind of rather leave, but she feels like forced to defend herself. So if you give her the opportunity to leave, like, she'll usually take it. Whereas with Abel, I feel like there's a lot more fight and play in there. And my strategies for coping with concern in flight horses is to walk. But with Abel, if I walk, I'm walking away from him. And then actually that just means he ends up chasing me, and that pattern just got worse and worse. And I wasn't really able to work out. I actually had a feeling in my gut that I was doing the wrong thing. But then it's like, how long do you stick with a pattern before like feeling like it's going to get better? Like, how quickly can you expect something to get better, and like wanting to be patient with the process? So then I tried being outside of the pen, but that didn't really work because the more I kept walking, the more he wanted to push on the fence. Then I went back inside, and then that was better, and I was practicing like walking nose to tail, and that was going okay. But then when another fly would come by, then the stress would go right up again, a lot higher than it was before, and yeah, then it would become really tricky again. And then I tried working with the touching distance and thinking, well, maybe he just wants me close. Like, there's something in this about closeness. And that was kind of working okay, but then it got to be too much closeness. Too much touching distance, and then things were getting worse again. And then Elsa comes over and stands still and starts moving her arms and dancing. And he's like, oh yeah, that's a type of support that helps me feel better really quickly. I'm like, oh my God, really? And so I felt kind of silly, like kind of stupid that I hadn't realized that earlier. And I think all those negative emotions about myself came up, you know, shame and embarrassment and all that kind of stuff that I know aren't really, not that they're not real, but that they're not helpful or functional. They don't lead to like a better feeling. And then there's also, like, Elsa's been talking to me a lot about timing. I was talking to her about how I feel like I'm always late. So we've been discussing when to basically like to wait past to observe, see things getting worse, then, but don't react while it's worse, react after they've self-soothed a little bit, but before it gets worse again. So it's kind of like you're not letting them rest on a bad feeling that just happened. Like once the bad feeling happens, then they pause to rest and you start moving to distract them from like thinking too much about the bad thing that just happened that you were in flow with. So that kind of made sense to me. She also talked about working towards like when I'm in flow and I'm wanting to work out like when they're gonna leave, like when I've been in a place too long. We were talking about learning to be in flow with that next step and to step away at the same time that they step away rather than trying to like anticipate it. And yeah, I just found it really exhausting, like trying to concentrate on every little thing that was happening all the time and like constantly being like ready to notice the thing. And then I would get so tired that then I would get distracted and then I would be thinking about something else, or then I would get fixated on one particular thing and then they'd have already moved and it had already happened and I would have no idea why it happened. So I think the answer is that I'm overcomplicating it and that I need to kind of go back to like my soft eyes feeling where I'm like concentrating on the whole picture and like the whole horse and the environment and the herd and this and this and this, and like just being generally aware of everything, like training myself to be like generally focused on the horse without like getting obsessed into one specific thing. So yeah, so I finished the session and literally had lunch and then slept for most of the afternoon because I was so like overwhelmed from all the information and I think the pressure as well. And when I've been playing with Abel, there was definitely some moments where like the adrenaline came up, like because he like ran at me a couple times, and that was another thing where I think like my feel was really off to not like know that actually like when he's pushing into me in those moments, like actually it's for me to like move towards him and be like woo and like surprise him and kind of like defend my space in that way. And yeah, so that was, I felt embarrassed about that, to like that I didn't know to do that. And I think it's a big shift for me because I think he's going to force me to set more boundaries for myself and take care of my own needs, because I don't think that he is going to make adjustments for me in the same way. Like Mia's a mare, and so she does have that like caring instinct, and she's really motivated for things to be better. So she's really motivated to help you fill in the gaps if she sees that you like that's what you want. And then Lawrence just like is a bit more submissive and wants everyone to be okay. Whereas Abel doesn't really have that. So I think he's going to force me to establish my own needs within the relationship between us over the next few days and to be okay with that, because he's going to make it not okay if I don't do that. And that's a really interesting challenge for me. And I think it's going to be really powerful, but I'm also like, at this point, kind of apprehensive about it. Like it's the end of day one. And the idea of doing it like fills me with anxiety, and I don't know how to rectify like the feeling between knowing that it's the right thing to do and being unsure how to not align that with dominance. And I think it comes down to this also fundamental issue within myself of being afraid to set boundaries and being a people pleaser and more like naturally submissive in a social situation, that I feel unsure in. Like if I feel confident in a situation, then I am more dominant. But I think with the horses, I tend to take a more submissive position because I feel like I'm constantly ready to accept that they were right and I was wrong. And I think that, yeah, holding a relationship of any sort, whether that's equine or human or other, requires two people to contribute. And I think it's like untangling having my own needs from being like pushy or rude or like expecting more than I deserve somehow. I think separating those two ideas is really important, because actually expecting a level of safety of my personal space in a relationship is not an unacceptable boundary, but it feels like that. Like to defend that boundary feels unacceptable to me. And that I think is a thing that I just really need to feel okay about. I don't really know how to feel okay about it. Because the idea of like asserting myself in that way makes me uncomfortable, even though I know that actually that's the leader that is needed in this situation. And I'm not going to be punishing him by like making a noise and moving towards him. Like that's not a punishment. That's not me being mean. Like that's just like establishing the way that I exist. And yeah, to do something like that for my own benefit feels weird. I think it's like remembering that actually it's for both of our benefits, because it's also for his benefit to feel safe. Because if he pushes into my space, I stop feeling safe, and then I stop being able to be there with him. So I think it's about trying to see it from that perspective, but it is hard. It's a hard lesson. So yeah, so it's been a really great day, but I am exhausted. So I'm happy to think that I've got 3 more days still. I'm ready to come back tomorrow. Hoping to have a good restful evening this evening. And yeah, let you guys know where I'm at by the end of tomorrow.